Hello, this is Jamie.
And this is Heather, and welcome to Using Our Inside Voice, a podcast where we awaken to the extraordinary meaning of everyday mundane life by passing it through a particle collider of different and differing perspectives. We're kicking off today's conversation by talking about the connection between the physical space that we're having the human experience in and the spiritual space. Where do they connect for us? Is it different for everybody? How does that work? And how are we experiencing it right now in our timeline?
Yeah, because I'm experiencing it in all sorts of ways right now,
Yeah,
and
you
they're
are.
not
You've got
fun.
it bad right now. No,
They're
no,
not
you
fun
got
at
it bad
all.
right now. Yeah.
It's like I'd rather not. But I started noticing, not that it hasn't happened before. It does. It's happened a lot, but I'm noticing more right now than probably ever, or I should say this year more than ever, that anytime we seem to have astrological events kind of strung together like a back to back to back thing, like there's a super moon and then there's an eclipse of some sort, and then there's a meteor shower or a major planet realignment. Like we just had a thing recently where, let's see, we have Saturn is supposed to be really visible to us right now, and Saturn has a bunch of things going on, and we're about to hit a new moon. Saturn's going to be in Pisces, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
And an eclipse.
and an eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime something like where those things get strung together like that, I feel like we're a lot more triggered physically. And again, like I said, right now, this year seems like it's more intense than I have seen it in possibly ever, but
Mm-hmm.
at the very least, a really long time. I can recall, I want to say maybe somewhere around 2017, maybe, yeah, like around 2017, I started feeling like 3 or 4 months into the year, I started feeling a lot of, I was super sensitive to like earth vibration. Like that's when I started getting like what I call the personal earthquakes, where
Mm-hmm.
like all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what's moving? And
Just you.
it's like, oh, that's just me. But it took me like months to figure that out because I'd be at work, and back then I was working in a metaphysical shop and I was in the showroom, and like especially in the mornings and stuff while we were getting things together, a lot of times I was just in like my sock feet or barefoot on like wood floor, and all of a sudden it would be like super vibrating, or all it'd be super vibrating, and then I would feel like this intense like aching in my bones, and it was literally like the earth was like grabbing onto my legs and like shaking me and going, pay attention, I need your help, are you
Okay.
listening?
Okay, so question for you, and this is gonna be so
Mm-hmm.
random, and I don't know exactly why it came up except for the fact
Go
that,
for it.
I remember when we were going on the ghost hunt down at the Pasadena catacombs, and
Mm-hmm.
we went to check it out prior, and we went into a few
Mm-hmm.
shops, and one of the places that we
Mm-hmm.
went into was the AT&T store on the corner, remember
Mm-hmm.
that?
Mm-hmm.
And when we
Mm-hmm.
walked into the AT&T store, it felt like we were being pulled down by our ankles
Yep.
down into the basement below. Is
Yep.
it similar to that? Okay, but it's not haunting
Similar,
activity
yeah.
this time.
No.
So it's still maybe a manifestation of an energetic source, and they're
Yeah,
both
yeah,
energetic
yeah.
sources. Okay. I was
Yeah.
just curious if that
That
was this because
checks.
I had felt it during that time. I know it gives me a reference of what you're feeling because I felt it too.
Yeah, that totally checks. But
Okay.
the personal earthquake thing is really funny because I hear people saying it all the time now where they're like, dude, did you just feel that? Like, was that just me? And
I've done that too.
it, we started using the term personal earthquake a lot where I was working at the time, and we'd talk to other people who were coming into the shop, and they're like, oh, I feel that too. I kept wondering what that was. And it's like, well, we've just been calling it our own personal earthquake because it seems like we're the only ones that feel it. at
Mhm.
the time. Everybody else looks at us like, "Are you okay?" And we're like, running and grabbing stuff, going, "Things are falling. The sky is falling."
That makes me wonder what people in other states that don't have earthquakes are
Feel
experiencing.
like
If they're yeah, like, do they recognize it? Do they
personal
recognize it?
tsunamis, personal
Well,
hurricanes,
n no, but I wonder if they would recognize it as a personal earthquake if they had the reference point that we
for its
have being from
earthquake.
California.
Yeah,
Would it occur to them that that's what they're experiencing? Or would they interpret
I
it
don't know.
differently?
I guess if you've never experienced an earthquake before, it might be a really weird thing to try to explain to
Mhm,
someone. Or I could imagine that would be like a really funky feeling. But
mhm.
I would guess just from hearing about earthquakes that you would probably guess that that's what that is. I don't know. But I'm also California born and raised, so I'm I don't know about
Bad
that.
judge. Poor judge.
Yeah, I'm yeah. It's like I'm not the right person to ask. But yeah, that is interesting. That is interesting. And I don't know if it shows up for maybe it shows up differently in people in different areas of the world that don't have earthquakes. But
Well,
it's
I think
definitely like an inner rumbling. And it'll sometimes like if you are like it used to happen to me a lot while I was like standing and in the middle of doing something, and it would literally rock me off my feet. Like I would stumble.
wow.
I'd have to like catch myself. There
Mhm.
were times when it would get that intense, and there were times when I'd just be sitting and it's like, "Whoa, did you feel that?" And it's like, "Oh, that was maybe just me."
Well,
So,
it's funny because I've had moments like that while, watching TV, and I'll
mhm,
mention something to my brother and he'll be like, "I didn't feel anything." And I always chalked it up to me being hypersensitive to earthquake
mhm,
activity and being a scaredy cat because I am totally self-admitted complete and utter scaredy cat when it comes to earthquakes. And traffic has increased greatly on the streets outside,
yeah,
and so I chalk it up
true,
to, oh, it must have been a heavy truck going by, or it must have been
yeah.
some street equipment, or I don't know.
And that's what I thought at first too. I kept just assuming, oh, there's got to be another reason for it. If nobody
Mhm.
else felt it, then maybe it was just again, like you said, a heavy truck going by, or something like that. But I I started really feeling into it, and the more that I would feel into it and kind of start examining and asking questions, because it seemed to happen more and more frequently. And I will never forget one day I was kneeling and I was putting an altar together at the store that I worked at. And I was trying to decide like, what kind of grid to do for this particular altar. And I had the feeling again,
Crystal grid.
and yeah, a crystal grid. And
Mhm.
then I had that feeling again, the little personal tremor. And along with the personal tremor, it totally hit me in the feels all of a sudden. And it was like this additional thing happened. And that's when I got the clue that I was feeling earth vibration, because it was like I had a conversation with Mother Earth. Gaia
What'd she
said,
say?
I'm hurting.
Mm.
Like there's a lot of stuff happening right now, and you are connected to me. And so you are going to feel it.
Mhm.
Things are changing and you're going to feel it. And other people like you are going to feel it. And it's funny because like in my relationship with my husband, my husband is the earth person. He's
Very
the
much so.
grounded, very much connected to Gaia individual. Not that I'm not at all, but like, if
He's a human
if I had
lightning
to
rod, for Christ's sake.
if I had to pick which one of us is closer to that sort of thing, I would definitely choose him. But at the same time, I do have a great respect and love for nature and the natural world. And it just felt like you're going to start, you're an energetic being, you're a very sensitive energetic being. You're going to start feeling all of these energetic shifts that are happening, that are taking place, and they're going to be more pronounced. That's the message that I got.
Mhm.
And it seemed like that kept happening and happening and building and building and building. And then we got to 2020 and it was like, oh, that feels like that feels correct. The kind of all the changes and people going inside for the first time in forever and things shutting down and like nature kind of started to reclaim stuff a little bit while we were all in lockdown and things like that. Like that felt correct. It was like
Mhm.
she needs a damn break. And she's
We
taking
all
it
needed a damn break.
right now. And then people started going back out and participating in nature. People were going on nature walks and, redesigning their backyards because that's all they had to do. Like I remember,
Mhm.
waiting in the pickup lines at the Home Depot because everybody was redoing their patio or their yard or something. Everybody was planning plans. It was like, go try
Noth
to plant a garden
nothing
right
says
now.
nothing says isolate like Home Depot waiting in line.
Hmm. Like, well,
Sure.
waiting to go pick up all of your, your mobile orders and such. But, that during that era, that that portion of time, I am working on so little sleep right now, you guys. It's not even funny. You're lucky I can speak at all. But during that patch of time, it seemed like that was one portion of the cycle. And now it seems like we're coming into a new portion of a cycle. And like I'm starting to feel that kind of like buzzy, intense. It's definitely hitting in certain parts of my body. Like for me right now, it's really hitting my sacral and my solar plexus. My
Mhm.
lower back is killing me and my digestive system is feels like it's been through the ringer. And there's some other stuff that kind of plays along with that too, but I always try to take a look at both sides of the equation. I know what my past history is with my health, and it's been a long journey and I'm in the thick of a whole other section of that journey right now. But I also like to step back from the actual, looking at the medical reasoning behind certain things, and I like to try to align that with some of the metaphysical meanings of what's happening. And it's very interesting. There's it feels like I'm being rebuilt,
Hmm.
and it's not pretty. it's not a it's not a fun process, but I had a moment like this in 2019 as well, and I was thinking about that this morning. It kind of like popped up for me this morning because I was starting to fall back into a practice that I had at that time as well, to try to help like heal things and get things back on track. And I remember around that time, like I had some pretty gnarly things happening at that point too, but that led to a really nice stretch of a nice reset where my body was responding very well to everything that I did. But it took a good, like, I don't know, I want to say like 3 months or so of kind of like really going through not very nice at all before I
Mhm.
broke through to, oh, hey, now it looks like, it feels like I don't have to work as hard.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the pandemic hit and then that all kind of went down the toilet and other things happened and I got derailed. But including grief, which I think grief is one of the biggest derailers of, like, if you're in a
Yeah.
good spot physically,
Yeah.
that'll just that'll really take you out of it real quick.
That's certainly what
So
derailed me.
yeah. So like
A
my apologies and condolences to anyone who is going through the thick of a grief period right now. because it's hard. The grief stuff is really hard when the earth itself is in a grief cycle or in a cycle of renewal or releasing grief. We tend to kind of, I don't know, I feel like energetically we go through the same sort of thing. There's this kind of deep, digging down and bringing up stuff that's maybe been toxic or that just hasn't been dealt with, and it kind of dredges it up from the depths and brings it to the surface for you to kind of look at and sort through. And that's really hard to do when your heart is hurting too.
Mm-hmm.
So
And yet we only really do it when our heart is hurting.
yeah. So you know it, I don't know that I have any truly comforting words other than to say it always comes in cycles.
It does, yeah.
You're in the thick of it, and you go around the circle until you're in a new space again, and it may never leave you completely, but you certainly come to a point of where it does feel like I'm on the other side of that. I can manage that better. I have more tools. I've learned a lot. There's always things that kind of come along the way of that work. But yeah, right now seems to be kind of a doozy when we're in that rebuild phase for ourselves. And I know we mentioned that the physical was going to be kind of a big deal. I can see a lot of people getting kind of involuntarily signed up for for big physical changes. Yeah, even people that have no clue about anything in the realm that we're normally in, getting very spiritual with it and all. Yeah, it's interesting to see people kind of getting whammied
Mm-hmm.
by by physical issues. Yeah, man, it's no fun. It's no fun.
No, well, physical
But
issues are never any fun because, I mean, I think the
mm-mm,
first thing that comes up when you go through physical issues is how long is it going to last? How bad is it going to get? How much money is it going to cost? I mean, there's so many questions when it comes to physical issues. How how do I want to handle it? Especially if you are kind of experiencing or experimenting with your spiritual path and you've kind of come to the conclusion, or maybe you're just disgusted at the state of the world and the state of our systems and how toxic and
mm-hmm,
fucked up they are. Maybe
mm-hmm,
that's part of the problem and it has nothing to do with spirituality for you, but you've decided you no longer want to deal with the systems as they stand. Where do you go from
yeah,
there? How do you move forward from there? What does that mean for your beliefs? What does that mean for everything you've been taught? What does it mean for your own inner systems that you have shaken hands with the physical world through these inner systems of, I'll go this far, but not farther? Or maybe you're thinking now, I won't go as far as I used to go at all. Or maybe you're
mm-hmm,
thinking, I can't even afford to go as far as I used to go.
yeah,
That's the kind of flux that we're in. And it's just, I've been picking up on this adding chaos to the mix slowly,
mm-hmm,
almost like when you're baking and you need to temper the eggs so that you don't scramble them when adding hot liquid to them. It's almost
yeah,
along those lines. When I pick up on it, it's like we're just going to add a little shake of chaos right here. And then we're going to stir it in. But it's a slow build and we're not getting scrambled, but we're being
yeah.
maybe tempered.
Well, and like I was just saying to you before we started, it almost feels right now to me like, and again, I preface this the same way to Heather. Not that I feel like anything catastrophic is on the rise, but it almost feels like, when the molten lava is kind of starting to bubble and the steam is starting to rise before the volcano blows. It's that kind of that kind of like rumbling and boiling and sizzling and some steam being let up. And funny, like in my mind, I also just saw, well, we are also coming up onto Beltane and not too long here, and that's very much a fire ceremony, a fire time, and igniting a regeneration and a
I have
rebirth.
been
And
I have been getting a lot of fire visuals in my
yeah,
mind lately.
yeah. So it's not unheard of that kind of energy is taking place right now. But I'm also feeling a lot of feminine energy, and not the sweet, kind, motherly feminine energy, but that the wild,
Feral,
creative, powerful, we're gonna shake shit up to make shit happen sort of energy. And we're seeing it reflected in the world. We're seeing a lot of things politically, and within the political system, within the healthcare system, rights, you know personal rights and things like that. It's very much getting shaken up right now. So I'm dealing with my own kind of, my sacral and my solar plexus being all knotted up, and feeling shifted and contracting, and just very much angry kind of a feeling internally. I have to look outwardly and go, well, I mean, it's kind of the energy of the world right now too. So it's not like, it doesn't surprise me necessarily. I just think it's interesting when you kind of start lining all the things up and going, wow, it's kind of crazy how that all plays together. And then you have the planetary stuff happening, and it's like, that's this is some interesting energy taking place right now. But again, like, I don't want to sound like, I don't know. I don't want it to cause alarm, I guess,
Mhm.
is the way that
Well,
I want to put it.
because what we're talking about is we're talking about the approach to a
Mhm.
shift. And the
Mhm.
feeling of the approach to any shift feels perilous. It
Mhm.
feels apocalyptic. It feels like the end because technically it is an end. But the thing about an
Mhm.
end, just like if you use tarot cards and the death card is death and rebirth, the two are
Yeah,
synonymous with one another.
they go
You
hand in
aren't going
hand.
to get just a death. It's not going to be a void. You're not going to just stop. You're not just going to end. The momentum doesn't stop. So, because we're discussing it on the approach, it's going to feel perilous, which is going to
Yeah.
maybe trigger people to catastrophize some.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that the only time we change is when we're made uncomfortable enough to do it. What is it going to take for us to protest and get our rights back? What is it going to take? I just watched a report on New York adding robots to their police force.
Mhm.
They're starting by adding this robotic digidog that they're sort of in the mainstream media. They're framing it as this sort of like policeman's helper. It's so cute. Look at it, and it's going to help all the police do their jobs. And I'm like, Blade Runner much? Like Battlestar Galactica much? Like, this is a sci-fi nightmare. I've had a no robots rule steadfast in my life since I became a dystopian cyberpunk lover. And no robots. Like, whenever I'm running a role play character or something like that, my characters are anti-robot. They're always anti-robot. And now I'm living in this physical existence where literally New York has weaponized digidogs on the police force. And I'm like, well, if this isn't apocalyptic, if this isn't dystopian, I don't know what is. Should I just move into the Bradbury building right fucking now? Because that's terrifying. They've just
And the first place I
weaponized.
go, the first thing I think of is what they couldn't have like, what is it, Rosie the robot made like a meter maid or something? Like they couldn't
No, they
start
had to go
there. They had to
straight to
go
weaponization and like,
they had
and I'm thinking, okay, so we have right now on
does it shoot
the
tasers out its ass or like
I
how
honestly
is
I
it
don't know. I don't know.
weaponized?
Look it up. It's terrifying. But we're right now battling the issue of discernment, not just across the planet, but specifically in the police force. If you can't teach your human cops discernment, who the hell is going to be teaching DigiDog discernment?
Yeah.
Who's going to be the first person to be unjustly shot by an inanimate object? I mean, that to me is terrifying. And I'm like, if you're not scared, you're asleep. So, but at the same time, I recognize that this step is just one of many steps that's going to march us towards something we don't want, to force us to choose something we do want or to fight for something we do want. And that's where
Well,
the
yeah.
shift starts to turn. That's where you go from peril to victory and empowerment.
And I think as far as like the feminine energy is concerned, it the feminine is an emotional energy, an emotionally driven energy, but it's also kind of the sense maker. It's like where the masculine energy is all about the seating in the building, the do. The feminine energy is the but why? But why though? And then how? And then how is it going to best serve? It's taking that, it's not that do go build seed create energy isn't necessary. It is, but there needs to be a thoughtfulness behind that. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think part of the energy that's coming up right now is as all of these things are bubbling to the surface and we're looking at things like the world of robotics and AI, as well as things like the very very old patriarchal systems that are now like clawing and scratching and trying to like hold on for dear life because
Mm-hmm.
it's very much slipping through the fingers of those who've had a grip on it for a long time. Those things are going to be more prevalent, and yeah, there are going to be more people that are like, no, I'm just not going to, I'm not hearing that anymore
Mm-hmm.
because this doesn't make sense, or you actually have to talk about this. You can't, hide your face anymore and just pretend that it's not happening. Like, we're going to have discussions. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to start listening to one another. We have to, because that's the only way things are going to happen in the way that they need to happen. And especially right now, as we're coming into this place where it's very new. Old things are still existing, but we're in a very new energetic space.
Yeah.
So we're being triggered by old things that are left over,
Mm-hmm.
but what we're stepping into is new. So those new areas don't have any scars. They don't have any history. So the triggers have to come from something old to trigger us to do something, to make
Well, and
decisions.
it's we've been taken back to that fork in the road. A lot
Mhm.
of us, when we stepped off the regular path of our lives and had that awakening experience that sort of rocked us to our very core, we were shifted onto a different track. We took a fork in the road. And
Mhm.
again, we've said this in a few shows back, we were talking about this, but we honestly, I think a lot of us thought that thank God we're shifted onto this new track, because now I feel like I have the space to expand. I feel like I have the space to make new choices. I feel like I can really change things. And little did we know that that fork in the road would sort of, when you got to a certain point on that road, you would rubber band back to the point where that fork split, and you would
Mm-hmm.
be forced onto the path that you had stopped, that you had diverted from to begin with, if that makes sense. Because
Well, you have the power to do
we,
things differently.
well,
You
exactly. It's giving us
you
the
shift what the road
opportunity.
looks like.
Well, yes, but we have to. That's the thing, is that we thought it was
Yeah.
going to be shifted for us because we chose to. We had this awakening, and when we had the awakening, I don't know about all of you, but when I had my awakening and I started going down the "Am I crazy or am I really experiencing this" road, I thought, okay, the handshake that I'm making is by choosing to see things this way, I won't have to deal with how things were. I thought that's how things changed. But no,
No.
what it means is you have taken a vacation, and you have taken that vacation for the purpose of doing different work. And that different work gives you all these different skills and abilities and perceptions and lenses and new focus to go back to where you had taken that break and continue along the path that you were on. So at some point in your spiritual journey, you're going to get picked up, maybe multiple times, depending on how things work for you and where you're at and what your mission is. You're going to be picked up off of the spiritual path and dumped back into that physical, this world sucks path that you thought you were escaping by taking the spiritual path. Boy, is that a slap in the face. But the reason it's happening is because you've developed so many skills. And the only way for you to
Mm-hmm.
see how you have developed is by providing the contrast of where you had been and putting you
Mm-hmm.
back there so you can see who you are now is not who you were then. And who you are now is what's going to change that which who you were then could not change.
Oh, that's definitely true. Like if I apply that to my own life, that's interesting too because it's 7 year stretch. You know about
What do you
those
mean?
7 year stretches, y'all.
What? I don't even
The
know.
Yeah, there are time periods of about 7 years that are considered like growth periods where you're learning a lot of lessons before you have to reapply those lessons. If you think about like when we talk about things like your Saturn returns and things like that, those usually happen in cycles of not necessarily just 7 years, but you usually go through a period of about 7 years of growth before kind of you get to put those things that you learned into practice and like big changes take hold. At least that's kind of what I grew up understanding as far as like growing up within my spiritual self, I guess.
I was like, where did this come from? I'm trying to figure out if this is an inner Jamieism or if this was written somewhere.
No, and I don't even know
It's
if
just
I can
something
point
you.
to I don't even know if I can point to a book, but I've had various teachers that have told me about 7 year cycles. Like I can't point to a book, I'm sure it's in books,
Mhm.
but these 7 year cycles, which makes sense if you look at like the chakra system and things like that and the basic seven and yada yada.
The
Seven makes
basic
sense.
seven. The basic seven what?
Chakras.
Oh, okay.
So, that anyway, going back to what I was just saying, if I
Mhm.
look at that time period of like the last 7 years, that was a huge period of growth for me.
Mhm.
And if I look at right now, I am sort of facing a recontinuation of where I had left off 7 years
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah.
It really did kind of just drop me right back off at the beginning and go, okay, well, here you go.
Yeah.
And if I think of it in those terms, yeah, man, that is some serious growth. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of the way that I'm dealing with my physical issues, my physical journey is
Mhm.
completely different. Even though some things feel very similar and I'm facing similar issues, the way that I'm handling it right now is hugely different from the
Mhm.
way I handled it 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I was on the verge of just completely losing it. Like, we're talking, crying uncontrollably, rocking yourself back and forth in the fetal position. I needed to be put on Valium type of, like, that uncontrollably I can't catch my breath. I'm crying so hard type of
Mhm.
freak out and anxiety.
Mhm.
And now it's like all those same things are present. There's similar situations, but I'm able to step back and kind of piece things together and kind of be kinder to myself. I'm no longer saying hateful things to my body. Like,
Mhm.
why are you betraying me? And what have I ever done to you? And why do you hate me? And, like, I used to say all sorts of terrible things to my physical self because I it felt like my physical vehicle was an enemy, and I was too tired to fight and too sad to love it and too burnt out to try. Like, it took a lot to even move forward at all back then. And I am not at all in that place anymore, even though I'm going through some really not fun physical stuff right now. It is no longer affecting me in a way where I feel fully out of control. I feel like at this point I'm really trying to be a better friend to my physical self. I'm trying to understand it more. I'm trying to see it better. I'm trying to make choices that bring me to a very vulnerable state of where I'm, going, I don't know if I want to trust Western medicine, but at the same time, I can see parts of it that are of value. So I want to try, but at the same time, I'm not going to just throw myself in the hands of Western medicine and say, do what you will. I'm I'm trying to partner more. I'm trying to bridge a gap more. And I'm trying to allow my body to show me where it is strong right now and where it can heal itself. And I'm trying to listen more closely about the types of things that I can do to help it heal. And I am trying to also at the same time see where my in my tiredness
Mhm.
where I could use more help, where I could do more as far as making better choices. And then at the same time, not beating up on myself when I make choices out of tiredness or desperation that end up being maybe not the best, but
Mhm.
also, not look, you're doing a good job. You're doing the best you can right now. It's okay. Things are hard. This isn't easy. We're going to get through this. You don't have to throw the towel in just because, things are getting hard. It's hard when your body puts you in a position or where you're being when you are in the middle of being put in a position where you have when you're kind of at the mercy of your physicality,
Mhm.
where your physical body is throwing up so many signs where it's like, we don't want anything right now.
Mhm.
You just need to just stop. Just stop. Today, you are going to be a little pile of mush in the bed, and all you're going to be able to do is drink water and try things. You're going to try to eat this thing and it's not going to agree with you. And you're going to try this thing and it's not going to agree with you. And then you're going to get tired and you're going to give up and you're going to eat something that you know you shouldn't eat, that your body is not going to like right now. And
Yeah.
then your body is going to tell you how wrong that was. And then you're going to
Mhm.
start over again and you're going to try it again. And you're just going to keep doing that until you figure out where you actually need to be. But it's not a kicking and screaming anymore. It's a, okay, let's try this again.
Mhm.
Let's
That's
start
another thing that I've been
again.
noticing though, is that the ever since that message about busy work started coming through for me, that everything you do in the physical world is busy work. Whether you are
Hmm.
making millions of dollars, closing some big business deal, or you are buying a house, or you are at someone's gravesite grieving them, or you are at, well, not grieving them, but the physical system of dealing with death, the planning,
Hmm.
the wearing, the choosing the clothes, the garb, all of these physical symbols in our world are
Hmm.
busy work that
Hmm.
are just place markers for our emotional state.
Yeah.
That's it. We're here literally just to process emotion. And
Yeah.
so, whether you're sweeping your living room or you're Netflixing and chilling, whatever you're
Hmm.
doing, it's busy work, no matter how important you think it is. Paying that
And that's
overdue
very
bill,
true.
busy work. And why is paying an overdue bill? Why does it sound like not busy work? It sounds so important to us because we've built up all these stories around it that if we don't pay it, this thing will get canceled and we'll get bad credit and blah 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 blah. It's all still busy work. Once you start to
Sure.
process the idea and start viewing it through that lens, that if it's all busy work, that means that none of it matters. That can be a little bit depressing at first. But on the flip side of that processing, you also get, if none of it matters, then I get to decide what I care about. And that is sheer fucking empowerment. The problem is that
Well,
people are
yeah.
so used to being disempowered that they never get to the empowerment part because they don't, it's so far out of their conceptual brain that they don't have any sort of notion about it. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing for me that's the most important to let you know. Like, once you get past the point where you realize that nothing matters, then you can move on to the point where whatever matters to you is what matters. And what is that? How does that change your world, your worldview? How does that change how you interact with your environment? How does that help, or does it help dissolve some of those urgency stories that knot your stomach up, you
That's a
know?
big one. That's a big
Yeah.
one. For me right now, what I'm noticing is no matter what, it's all going to work out. That's the place that I've reached. No matter what, it's all going to work out. And that gives me enough space to figure out the best way to handle things in the moment without stressing myself out, to a spot where I need to be medicated.
Mhm.
It allows me to be frustrated and tired and
And
you know
sad and
and
depressed
sad and
sometimes.
maybe in pain, but at the same time go, okay, this is just a phase. This is just a part of the journey. There's going to be another side to this. I can still look forward to that other side and deal with this the best I can in the moment. And that's what I'm doing, just one little piece at a time. And I'm seeing a lot of people go through it right now. And it's, I think it's a big portion of the last big lesson that we've been learning is Look at all the tools you have. Look at all the things you've learned. Look at all the ways that you can help yourself that maybe you had no idea that you were that strong or that you had that much knowledge or that you could persevere or that you could speak up and say something and advocate for yourself. All those things that maybe you didn't have the inkling to do the last time this situation came around, you're now facing, knowing how fully stocked you are in all of the things that you need to actually move through it.
I think one of the biggest things that came out of this spiritual journey so far for me is it gave me permission where I thought I wasn't allowed, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to, because
Yeah.
that's how our world trains us. It tells us that we're not allowed. Either we're not allowed to feel that way, we're not allowed to do that thing, we're not allowed to have that thing. Everything is, I mean, even down to religion. Religion is like, well, God's not going to love you if you're a sinner. So you better repent, damn it. And it's utterly ridiculous. So having put myself on a path where I realize that I'm the only one who gives me permission and takes it away. I'm the only one. Coming from a place where I thought that was the world's job. That was the universe's job. That was fate's job. That was some bigger force's job outside of me. Coming into this inner space and realizing, oh, in order for something else to have that over me, I have to give it to them first. I have to give up that power. And the thing that frustrates me about this message is that no matter how many times I try to say it, every time I approach it, I am sure that I am going to say it in a way that is going to turn that light bulb on for the person who usually rolls their eyes and doesn't believe it. And every time I say it, I can feel my inner self going, no, I would have rolled my eyes at that too. That sounds like complete bunk. It sounds like absolute bullshit. And I can feel it happening again. I'm like, no, it was right there. I had it. Brr. No, but someone out there is going to be on the precipice of learning this for themselves. And
Yeah.
maybe it will be that little hook that pulls them over to the other side this time. Because
Well,
here's the
and
thing
it's
that's
all
been
in the
coming up.
underneath too. It's not necessarily the words that are saying, it's the energy that comes along
Mm-hmm.
that's rumbling underneath. It's that little earthquake that's underneath everything that we're saying.
Yeah.
And if it's your turn to hear it, then you'll hear it. And if it's not, then you might not. But, I'm pretty comfortable in that if you need to hear it right now, that you will receive it in some way.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one thing that's been coming up for me, you know how I'm always I try to stay mindful in my evening ritual. It's really the only ritual
Mhm.
I do anymore. I don't really play with a lot of the spiritual tools that I used to play with. They're just not calling me right now. So the one thing that does call me, because it helps connect me to my higher self, my guides, my team, angels, whatever you think you have, fine, call it that. I don't know, but the greater energy, it connects
Mhm.
me to that. So the evening routine is something that I do pay attention to, and I change it and adapt it constantly. And the theme, I've realized that themes start coming in, and that's part of the channeled message that I'm supposed to pick up and examine. And part of the channeled message for me right now that I'm picking up and examining is, I think the last time it was, I had gone from asking for freedom to asking for abundance, because to me, abundance provided the ability to be free of things. But really, that was just the handshake. Abundance is just the handshake to try and deal with the world that you don't want to deal with. It's like, if I can pay it, then it'll go away. If I can just pay the ticket, it'll go away and I can continue to drive, no problem. So I realized at some point that I had to go beyond that. It's not about abundance. If you really want freedom, what are you looking for? Are you looking for empowerment? Well, how do you empower yourself? And so on and so forth. And the thing that's coming to me now, the buzzword, the thing that's making me sort of like excited and feeling that sense of power well up within me, is self-reliance.
Mm.
And it's weird because it's a concept that I sort of took for granted. Like, of course, I want to be self reliant. Who doesn't want to be self reliant? But what I'm starting to realize is that I have all of these little leftover threads of narratives that are still gunking up the
Mhm.
works of self reliance. So I will be in a mindset where I'm going to be self reliant, but then the tiniest little pebble will derail me from that. And I will mindlessly
Mhm.
fall asleep and be triggered into that same old disempowerment narrative that takes me from seeking self reliance to seeking to be rescued.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so interesting because if you ask me, especially in a good moment, if I consider myself self-reliant, I'll be, hell yeah, I consider myself reliant. I'm so self-reliant. No one's a self-reliant. No, no, I'm not. I mean, the narratives that I have that I'm waiting to be rescued, and that if someone would just come and do this, or if I could just win the lottery. I hear that one a lot. I don't say that one because I
Yeah.
don't play the lottery, but I hear it a lot from people. Any day now, I'm going to win the lottery. I'm going to win the lottery. My spirit guides are going to protect me. There's so many, and I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying that a lot of us are asleep to the fact that those exist because they are handshakes that help diffuse the story beneath them, which is, I can't do it myself. So
Yeah.
now in my nightly ritual, I'm going in and I'm saying, help me, put me on a path of self reliance, which is terrifying because when you ask spirit to give you something, it often gives it to you in spades. And that can be very, 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 very unsettling. So asking for self reliance is terrifying, because generally that means like, oh, well, you were depending on this thing, so we need to show you that, so we're going to take it away. And then before you know it, you're like, oh no.
And for me, I have this story of responsibility that also triggers perfectionism. And that's weaving its way in right now. And I'm working through that. That's I can't do this thing, or I can't do this thing to the extent that I want to, because I feel like if I don't quote unquote do it right, or do it big enough, or whatever enough, that I'm not serving in the way that I need to serve, that I have this responsibility to. And it's so funny because it's never a responsibility to me. It's always a responsibility to others. Well, I'm going to fuck it
Yeah.
up for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, no, no. That's not a thing, because everybody is
Mm-mm.
on the, you are not responsible for anybody else's portion of this journey. That is their own thing. So kind of sitting with that and going, okay, yeah,
Well,
that's not a
and not only
reason.
that, not only
That's no
that, but
reason
when
for
you're
that.
carrying that responsibility to other people, you are
Mhm.
100% positive that your version of responsibility to those people is also their version of your responsibility to them, that they see it the
Yeah.
same way. And
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times, they don't have any clue you're carrying such a burden and would never ask you to, and don't even understand where the fuck you got that in the first place.
Yeah.
Where did you even come up with that? Like, I never asked you to do that. And this is how people start feeling so indignant when they don't get the proper response from their actions, because they're carrying
Yeah.
around a story that they think is 100% true and held by both parties when it's only really held by one side.
Yeah.
And
So,
that's so unfair to be on the receiving end of.
yeah, and if I think of that and I apply that to like what I'm going through physically right now, it makes perfect sense that of where I am holding the physical stuff that I am holding right now. That's because that's a huge knock on your ego. That's a huge
Mm-hmm.
knock on your self-confidence. That's a huge, like roadblock in the way of creativity and passion and aligning with all of that. So it makes sense to me that I'm sitting with those feelings right now, and that I'm also having the physical response that I'm having, and that the astrological things that are happening right now are happening because, again, we're moving in a time where, in that period of rebirth We're moving towards very fiery things. This is kind of the like burning off the rest of the stuff that's in the way of the growth. So it's, if you haven't made it over a hurdle yet, if you still feel like you have some sort of hurdle to jump over, then expect that hurdle to be incredibly prominent right now, and expect the
Mm-hmm.
universe to put things in front of you that kind of force you to deal with it, because now's the time to do that. Now's the time to, figure out how you want to move forward and how you want to deal with that, and what you can do, what tools you have to make it through. Like I started really thinking about, well, how would I handle this type of situation for someone else? Like, what kind of advice would I give someone else if I was doing healing sessions with someone else? What would I do? What sort of advice would I give them? What sort of intentions would I hold for their healing? What sort of space would I make? And then I had to ask myself, honestly, do I hold that type of space for myself when I'm in those situations? And the answer was no. I am too busy trying to move on to the next thing, and I'm not turning it back around to myself and going, but what do I need? How do I need to incorporate that? What things do I need to do to make sure that I'm in that space? How am I nurturing that for myself? And this whole journey of, kind of starting to take a deeper look at the physical issues that I've had for a really long time, and starting to really make big changes on shifting those, it's really forcing me to go, okay, how much had I just been putting on the back burner and ignoring, and just thinking, oh well, I'm just gonna keep trucking forward and it's going to work itself out. No. No, there's things there that, you need. I had to like have the conversation with myself of, you need just as much time, love, holding, compassion, nurturing, healing, sacred space, attention. You need just as much of that as the people that you see out in the world that you're putting your little feelers out there for. You need to turn some of that back and put it back to you, because, empty cup.
Mm-hmm.
You can't serve from an empty well. You can't drink from an empty cup. It doesn't work that way. And yeah, like, that's been really huge.
Well,
I
and
know
amazingly
more.
enough, this weird little thing is coming through, and I don't even know if I have
Okay.
enough of the concept to even put it into words, but I'm going to try.
Okay.
And the thing that's coming through is, what you're talking about, of course, is self love. And every time we bring up self love, we sort of get blindsided by the concept and the cliche of the concept.
Mm-hmm.
But what the important message about self love is, when you start to parent yourself like the parent you wish you had when you were a child,
Mm-hmm.
and when you start to heal yourself like the best healer that you could be for someone else, you are finally experiencing for the first time in your life true love,
Mm-hmm.
because it is coming without any agenda. It circumnavigates all of those stories that our wounding
Mm-hmm.
programmed us with when we were very little, that we grew up with, that we're so unaware of their existence. We don't even realize that when we're experiencing love from someone to us, we are already applying automatically those stories from our wounding that we had when we were children and growing up. So the only way to actually understand what it's like to receive love is to figure out how to give it to yourself. And once you do that, and once you become awake to what it's like to receive love from you to you, only then are you able to experience love from others to you. Until that point, the love that you're experiencing from others to you is actually just a handshake with that other person
to save you or whatever your narratives happen to be that you need, fulfilling your needs. That
Yeah.
they're literally a band-aid to keep the stories at bay until you go in and start to love yourself in the ways that you wished others had. That's like,
Yeah.
sometimes I think I say amazing stuff and I hear the words come out and I'm like, I think I said nothing though. Why does it feel amazing when I think I say nothing? I'm not sure, but it feels like I said something amazing, but it also sounds like absolutely nothing at the same time.
Because the energy was correct. And this was really funny. So I don't know if it was the first time you said the word love in that little section of speech, but it was really crazy because you were talking and you said it and you kind of exhaled
Mm-hmm.
a little at the same time, and it was very odd because I felt it like you were in front of me talking. It was
Mm-hmm.
like somebody said something and I went, and it was like I felt the air of it in my face, and I was like, that was very angelic. That was very much
Aw.
like that was very spirit guided. It felt like they went, hear this. And it was like, oh, how
How was
nice.
their breath?
That was very
How was
nice.
how was their breath?
Minty fresh.
Nice.
No, it had no smell. It was just a really cool feeling. It was a very warm, fuzzy feeling, and I think that was very interesting. That was a very interesting physical manifestation of that particular lesson,
But
and
I've
it
been
being brought through in a
experiencing
really unique
this.
way.
I've been experiencing this a lot lately. Like this is the new thing for me. I feel my heart chakra expand and I feel it radiate, which I felt before here and there, but it was never dependable, I guess. I don't know. It
Mhm.
didn't happen enough to be a thing. Now I feel it. I feel these messages come through, and I can tell when I speak to someone, even if I speak gibberish, which is funny because as I said gibberish, they tried to insert light language.
Mhm.
And I was like, haha, gibberish.
Because it's really the same thing. Like light
It's
language
like the
and
ultimate
gibberish, same
gibberish.
thing. It
Yeah.
is the ultimate gibberish, yeah. But it is that way that there is this transference of pure energy from one person to another. And I'm still sort of in a I don't know, kind of tentative state with it. Like it's happening a lot, but I'm not quite sure if it's going to stick around. You know, when you get a new gift and you're kind of like, but is it mine though? Like, is it really going to last? I don't know. But I
Every
think that's
time.
another
That happens
thing.
every time.
That's another thing that people are going to start experiencing is new
Yeah.
gifts that are coming through. I don't know. There's some sort of handshake taking place. There's some sort of, since we've moved into this new space, there are new opportunities that will present themselves to you. And it's coming. If it hasn't already happened in the last few months, it's coming for you. And these new opportunities are ways to use what you've already learned that will key you into things you didn't know were things yet, if that makes sense. You didn't know that these skills existed. They are paradigm free. They've never happened before. You've never seen it or experienced it before, and suddenly you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I think this is the next kind of big gift of this new place that we've landed in, this port that we've docked in. I think this is one of the sort of it's learning the physics of this new world we stepped into. It's part of the physics.
Well, and it's funny because it's like, and expect those things to be things that you maybe have been doing for a really long time and just have not realized how impactful they were and how much of a thing they actually are, especially if it's a thing that you can't explain,
Mm-hmm.
especially if especially if it feels so natural to you
Mm-hmm.
that it's not a thing in your mind.
And
That's not a thing that I do.
once you realize the value of those things that are so natural to you that you've taken them for granted all those years, your whole life, once you realize how valuable those things are, you start to see their value, it increases their
Mhm.
potency and it levels them up This is how you get to the next level. When you realize all of those things that you took for granted, you increase the potency because now you see it and you know how to harness it. Ooh,
Ooh,
that's
that
going to
was
be
so weird.
powerful.
So I just had full chills that went up my legs, like through my toes up to the upper part of my legs.
Uh-huh.
And what I heard was, you're rooting. You're rooting those
Yes.
skills. You're rooting those gifts, those things that came in through your crown that have been slowly dripping their way down your chakra system and kept getting caught at your solar plexus, where you said, I'm not skilled enough, I don't know enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not studying enough, I don't have enough certifications, I don't have enough people acknowledging, I don't have, enough experience, whatever the excuse is, that I can't, that I don't feel, because that's the next part, is in the sacral, is a lot about how we feel about ourselves. I don't feel like I'm worthy enough to express that, or to offer that, or to help with that, or to even to benefit from that, or to monetize that, or to be reciprocated. I guess that's probably the best way of saying that, is to be reciprocated for that in particular.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those things are starting to wash through those two areas, and you're starting to finally root that in your chakra, and it doesn't really take hold in your life. It doesn't show up for you in your life until you're able to root it.
Mm-hmm.
Once we root it, that's when it's made its way through all of the obstacles that all the hurdles that you've placed in front of it, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. That's when the magic, the true magic, really happens, because that's when there's no questions anymore that it's valuable, or that it's a thing, or and you get to the point where it's like, well, I don't care. Like, it's a part of me, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like breathing,
Mm-hmm.
and no matter what anybody else says about it, it's not a part of me that's changing. This
Mm-hmm.
is a part of me, at my
It's
core.
steadfast, it's dependable. This is what self-reliance, this
Yeah.
is the foundation for self-reliance
Reliance.
that we're
Yeah.
tapping into. And I don't know about you guys, but I want to live a self-reliant life. I want to be so comfortable. Jamie just got chills. I want to be so comfortable with what I'm doing and how I'm doing it that I don't think about things anymore. That the things about life, the physicality of life that I hate, those are just things that I do to get them out of the way.
Yeah.
Like batting at flies.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, it used to be like, I hated paying bills so much that I'd put it off every month until half of them were overdue. And then I'd stress out about how bad I am at paying bills and I'm never going to be an adult and blah, 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 blah. Insert spiral here. Now it's like, I'm just going to pay it so I can get it out of the way and go play. I
Yeah.
want to go play. I'm clearing the way for myself to go play because that's the most important thing to me. I was told my
Hmm.
entire life, well, you can't play forever. Sometime you're going to have to be an adult. And what that meant was sometime you're going to have to take responsibility. You're going to have to do all of these things that you don't want to do. And that's really what being an adult is. That's what you have to look forward to. But
Yeah.
now I'm doing my damnedest to become the utmost feral version of the child that I used to be. That's what I want to be as an adult. I want to be an utterly feral child.
Yeah.
And if the way to get the freedom to be her is to pay all those bills to get them out of the way and then go be feral, that's what I'm going to fucking do.
And I feel like that is the feminine energy that we're stepping into too. It's the, screw the ladylikeness of it all. Screw the supposed to and the shoulds and the cross your feet at the ankles and be polite and be dainty and meek. And it's like, no,
No,
no. And
be the kids that stop grandma and grandpa from having their cozy nap on the weekend because they're screaming, having fun in the pool. They're so clueless about anyone else that they're, I'm not saying go forward and be completely selfish, although, knock yourself out. I dare you. But
it's not
that's
about
the kind
being
of
a douche.
energy.
It's about
Right, exactly.
being, it's about sitting
Free.
in your power and
Yeah.
understanding that because somebody else created a bullet point list of what it's supposed to look like to be a worthy individual, you do not have to follow that list. Who are they to make this list?
It's
Go
lists like
ahead.
that got us here in the first place.
Yeah, it is lists like that got us here in the first place. But anyway, I don't know. It's going to be, I think it's going to be an interesting leading up to summer. I think it's
Mhm.
going to be an interesting couple months. I think we're going to see a lot more fieriness come May, June. That feels like, it's seasonally, it's kind of a time for that anyway, but it feels like we're going to see a lot more directness, a lot less trying to dance around stuff that we don't like.
We're
It
going to
just
kiss
feels
the
like it's
wild. I think we've done the thing. And, if you stayed with us this long, thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. If you have things to tell us, please reach out. We have so many little linkies on, go to our Instagram, go to
we
our
do.
Discord, go to our Patreon. It's all free, it's all there for you. We list an insights page on our Patreon so that you can find out more about the things that we've talked about. If you have questions, reach out through email or DM us, whatever. And make sure that you follow us so that you can stay abreast of all of our happenings. And we always have a Discord meetup after we publish a show. So
Yeah.
join us there too, because it has turned out to be actually really enjoyable.
It's a fun time. We're kind of learning to play around with it a little more, and that's going to continue to be a thing. I'm sure we'll discover new and fun ways to use that particular technology. We
Technology.
simply like reaching out to
Mm-hmm.
others.
Well, we like to know that
And
that what we're experiencing is also being experienced by
yeah,
like-minded people.
yeah, absolutely. So thanks for tuning in, y'all, and we will see you next time.